With that, we will swiftly move on to our next panel, which shall be talking about the regulatory model for CBDC situated for the African market. In this panel, as you can see before us, we have a myriad of exceptional speakers. Our moderator for this panel shall be Paul Ezefulukwe, President and co-promoter and stakeholders in Blockchain Technology Association of Nigeria.
Thank you so much, Global Policy House, Mitchell and the team. We're so glad to be here. Before me today, we have, we're just going to the business of the day. We're here to look at the central bank digital currency, the right regulatory model for the CBDC suited for the African market. So before with us today, we have Olayemi Ayanechi, the founder and managing partner of Ceftron Frost. We have the lead partner, Senator Ihanya of Infusion Lawyers. We have Neda Nwachukwu, the regional manager of Paxful in Nigeria. We have Emomo Timi Agama, the DD head registration, exchanges, and market infrastructure and innovation department of the SEC. And we have also Adedeji Owonibi, senior partner, financial forensics, virtual assets, regulator advisor, and for A&D forensics. So thank you all and welcome once again. I would like to start with Olayemi. Please, what are the considerations? Let's quickly go into what we're here for. What are the considerations needed to be made before developing a regulatory framework for fintechs in Africa generally?
Thank you very much, Paul. I think before developing a regulatory framework for fintech, I think it's useful to consider what does fintech do? You know, so fintech just takes financial provision of financial services into the technical territory. And I think for me as a finance lawyer, one key issue with financing is information asymmetry. So the issue is, how do you ensure that, you know,
Can we all hear, or is it, okay, we can hear her. Okay, her network. Africa really needs to do something about
Hello,
that.
Paul. Hello,
okay,
Paul.
You're back. Thank you. Thank you.
Can you hear me better now?
Yeah. Your network just went off for some seconds. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. So maybe I should start from the beginning because I don't know where I left off. Like I said, when you talk about fintech, you are talking about the sheer aggregation of the ability to reach a lot of people that technology creates. So for me, I think in thinking about to regulate fintech, you should focus on number one, how to create more financial inclusion. Because until fintech came, you know, there was such a high population, for instance, of Africans. They were still unbanked. But with fintech, we had the ability that we could reduce that because, you know, people could now do banking or financial transactions on their phones. Some phones, you know, with the USSD code even made it easier. So I think we should try to reduce that information asymmetry and create financial inclusion. And I think at the same time, we should look at reducing fraud. Cybercrime is a major issue. So we need to think about how do we reduce fraud while at the same time creating more avenue for more people to bank. That is essential. I also think that in doing that, I mean, we need to look at financial technology. There's a speed with which it grows. And, you know, standard regulation may really not be able to catch up. So we need to create an environment where it is more flexible and more adaptable. And that is why for me, I see, you know, we need to focus more just on not rules, but more principles. What are the outcomes that we're trying to achieve? What are the functions that we need to regulate? So we need to do a lot that doesn't apply a one-size-fits-all approach. The idea is to identify the function, to identify the business lines, and then try to regulate in a way that regulation is not always trying to play catch up. the rules are flexible enough that they can adapt very, very easily. I know a lot of other people will talk about it. And for instance, the recent sandbox regulations of CBN, it tries to achieve that objective. And I think another thing we need to make sure is market integrity. And when regulators are creating laws for them, that is one of the focus. You know, the securities regulator wants to protect investors, investor protection. What is the protection there for consumers? The central bank, for instance, wants integrity in the system. It wants to prevent crime. It looks at issues like anti-money laundering and combating terrorism. So whatever regulation that's put in place must look at all those aspects that banking and financial services, those are the risk in banking and financial services. And that regulation must focus in a way that tries to address that. At the same time, while not creating bottlenecks, while giving an avenue for new entrants to grow. For instance, you want to reduce the barrier to entry, not make it higher. So try to find that law that's robust enough, while at the same time doesn't impose extraneous restrictions on innovators or entrance to the market. For me, I think that should be the goal of regulation.
Thank you so much. Just to tee off a bit based on what you just said, Mr. Deji, are you there? She talked about fraud prevention. In just 2 minutes, can you tell us, are you there, Mr. Deji? Okay, I think he's not there. We'll come back to that later. Mr. Senator, what do you think about each country having its own regulatory framework? What do you think about that? Should each country in Africa have their regulations, or should it be an African thing? Seeing the African Union come up with some position, I think last year, concerning the Free African Move. What do you think about that?
Thank you very much, Mr. Paul. That's a very interesting question. First, to make a decision on that, it starts with understanding the markets. It starts with understanding the economy. It's not, the purpose of regulation is not for its own purpose only. The purpose of regulation is to protect consumers. It's also to ensure that innovation is not stifled. There's enough regulatory support, technology support, market support, and all of that. Seen from that perspective, I would say that in determining whether to go country-specific regulation or a continental-wide one that is principle-based, you need to understand the African continent as a whole, first of all. Africa as a market, and we're at the time when everyone is looking at playing as a one market economy in order to be more competitive. So these things need to be in context. This is why I always think that when regulators come to this space, they need to understand the context within which they are regulating, so that they can help to make things work and fix critical frictions in the space. So having said that, I would say that it is better for Africa as one market to have a broad-based, principle-based regulation at the top. All African countries, you could take it from the African Union perspective. You develop a framework, a regulatory framework that is principle-based only. It doesn't have to be specific, just be principle-based. And this should be driven by certain characteristics in the African fintech space. For instance, we know that there are three basic drivers of fintech growth in Africa. One is the demographics in Africa in terms of the youth population. The second one is technology, which is mobile technology. Lots of Africans are becoming more mobile because of the era of information technology and mobile technology. And then, of course, there's also that aspect that looks at driving innovation in the space, all right? So having recognized this and recognizing that this is basically present in most of Africa, from Nigeria to South Africa to Kenya to Ghana, which is coming up very strong in fintech these days, you need to realize that in all of these markets, there are central drivers. So as a regulator, you want to come with broad-based, principle-based regulation, more policy-based. Once you come up with those, then the individual African countries, the authorities in the respective African countries can look at the detail specifically in terms of, okay, in Nigeria, what is happening here? This approach is much more better for one basically reason, two reasons really. One, there's uniformity in terms of the principles. Wherever you play in Africa, you know that, for instance, there is technology neutrality. You know that wherever you play in Africa, there is what's it called now? There is the principle that innovation will not be stifled. There are also principles like consumer protection, investor protection as well. So once you have all that, the countries at their different levels would then look at each of their growth stage. The truth is that it won't be advisable for us to have a broad-based policy that stifles the growth of individual African countries. Because whether we like it or not, certain countries have gone ahead of many other countries. And so it won't be fair, for instance, to tie the growth and development in the fintech space in Nigeria or in South Africa to that of, say, Benin Republic, all right? So the idea is to be able to improve regulation from a broad-based perspective, and then at the country level, you have the specific ones that address specific industries. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Deji, do you think a principles-based framework developed by a continental body will be better for Africa?
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Paul. The issue of regulation is a very big elephant in the house. And it's something that is taking every government, every regulator, and giving them a lot of challenges to actually tackle. A one cap fit all, like previous speakers have all said, and the most recent by Senator, is not going to work for all. Because the developmental level, the level of each country differs from one country to another. Some of them possibly have laws, because the whole thing we're talking about centrally on CBDC takes a lot of things. It's like a building completely from the ground to the top. And the legal people will tell you there's so much work to be done. From our own end, from the anti-money laundering regulatory perspective, there's so much to be done. You know, it touches from the foundation of every country. Because here we're talking about CBDC, we're talking about a sovereign-backed coin that will probably replace what we're used to. So many questions will be that the domestic laws of every country has to be tinkered with. And are you going to say now every country that we have start up at this point begin to change your law, and so that we can carry everybody along? It's not possible, like Senator did allude to, you know, because the space of growth of individual country actually differs. So one can't fit all for me. I would say not really, but we'll go as we understudy the whole space. I will begin to look at how the laws can also come in, because look at it. This has to do with a complete rejig of the country's constitution, because there's a sovereign money, for instance. So you're talking about the central bank law, you're talking about the banking law, you're talking about the criminal law, you're talking about the budget and tax laws and whatever, financial integrity, the SEC and all that. So you can see that it's not something you can just snip in and snip out, because there's a lot of work to be done. So for me, I think everyone can go at his own pace, looking at the peculiarity of the African countries. And we take it off from there and we understudy and see how this whole thing will roll out. Thank you very much.
Mr. Deji, before you go, the first speaker, Mrs. Olayemi, mentioned something concerning fraud prevention. I think I was looking out for you then. What do you think, as a forensic expert, what do you think concerning CBDC, fraud prevention, money laundering is around, international remittance, being able to track using For example, the issues that Africans have where you find out some few people will just fritter the money out of the continent. What do you think concerning that as a forensic expert?
Thank you very much again. And there's no single way and single answer to the whole thing. It is still a very dicey thing that everybody is looking at to how they can work around it. Yes, we know that there are bad actors within the economy, there are bad actors within our globes, and there seems to be very, very fast in taking advantage of new technology as soon as it comes on board. They are normally the first movers. The regulators are doing most of the time catch-up game. But here we have to strike a balance. Like I had a little discussion some couple of days ago with a CBDC expert in the United States working with the Federal Reserve. And he said, look, JJ, I want to pick your brain on how we can actually balance, users' privacy and also ensuring that anti-money laundering, terrorism finance acts are also, being maintained. And I say that is a dicey area that we're also still very much looking into. And I referred the person I was speaking to the European Central Bank's anonymity voucher, which they did in trying to try out, how people can be anonymous on that same thing in protecting their privacy, and as well as trying to see the back actors, the fraudsters on the space, that how can they be termed. If you say, oh, people on that same thing have to be on the radar, have to be anonymous, how do you now check out this? So it's a dilemma. Is a dilemma that have to be unraveled. Yes, we want people to actually spend their money and do all the activities in privacy, just like they can do with the fiat and the cash that we do have now. So when it moves and transition into CBDC, how can that be guaranteed? Because it's absolute right of individual, for you not to know every single thing that I do. So when you gather the data from the micro level stage, what do you do with it? And of course, the data privacy thing is there also, and also the NDPR is there, the right to be forgotten and all that. So you have to incorporate the whole thing together as you try to follow the back actors. Like I did say earlier, there's a lot to be done. I was involved with the Financial Action Task Force, instruction that they gave that visual asset service providers have to, interchange information about who is transferring what above $1,000 in their exchanges and all that. And it is an instruction, it is what they recommended by the Financial Action Task Force, but it's not doable until there are standards, until there are protocols, and that was why we worked for many months to come up with a visual asset service provider standard to conform with that. And currently we're involved with setting the protocol. So it's a long journey. Yes, it is good we are discussing that. It is good that we are actually on this now, but it is actually a long journey and there's no one.
Thank you so much, Mr. Deji, for that. We're making progress. It's a long journey, but progress is being made. Let's hear Mr. Timi Agama. Sir, this question is for you. What should be included in an effective regulatory framework for the African fintech ecosystem? What would and what should be included in an effective regulatory framework for the African fintech ecosystem?
Okay, Paul, thanks for having me, and co-panelists. It's nice to be here again. Clearly, the issues are just very plain and straight. What needs to be included, it's all around what we've all been talking about and what we all know. Investor protection framework. I mean, I'm a securities regulator. My business is how do I protect the investor that people are luring into investing? What are the risk management tools around your investment platforms, around your fintech platforms? What are the issues around business continuity? What are the issues around reporting? What are the issues around AML, CFT? These are my interests. How do I identify people? What is the KYC around people that are going to invest? what is indeed the KYC around the companies themselves that are bringing themselves out as being the vehicles for these investments? Do we have some fraudulent practices amongst them? Do we have some people whose intention basically is to sniff out the life out of common investors, to lure people around, to make them believe in what does not exist? Are there high sounding or high faluating issues around the kind of things when we speak around or when we speak about fintech? What is the definition that we give to fintech? How do we get the ordinary person on the street, the retail investor, to understand that some of these things are not for them? Yes, we have been touted to be about the best in peer-to-peer lending and peer-to-peer cryptocurrency and all of that. What does that all mean? Does it mean that people are being snuffed off their life savings every day as a result of lack of knowledge and understanding? Is it a game that people are going into that they don't know the result of the game at the ending of the day? Do they have a voice even when they are duped? Do they know who to go to? Do they know where to go to? Are they being deceived? Are issues being misrepresented? These are our interests. At the SEC, these are our interests. And that is why it's important that we have a framework, a regulatory framework. But before regulatory frameworks, there must be a clarity. There must be an understanding. There is a convolution around what digital asset is, what fintech is, what cryptocurrencies are, what blockchain is, especially because the languages are very, very high sounding. They are high sounding that very few people really know what it means, and very few people know what they are going into. Recently, somebody, a well-respected person within the space brought to my attention some guys that are busy taking out people's life savings, from 1,000, 5,000, all in the name of, introducing a coin, all in the name of creating an investment and promising returns that we know are not possible, unsuspecting Nigerians. And you know how easy it is. Imagine if, 100 million Nigerians are able to bring out simple 2,000 naira. Imagine how much that money is. Not to talk of being able to produce 20,000 naira. And people go all out even to borrow money to get into this investment. All because there is little or no education, all because people are taking chances, all because people are taking advantage of people. And for us as regulators, we cannot sit there and watch this happen. The essence of what we have done, first and foremost, is to provide clarity. Okay, what do we want to regulate? Who do we want to regulate? Why are we regulating what we want to regulate? Once that clarity is absorbed by everybody, then we can now come out with the specific regulations concerning every aspect that concerns us. Mark you, every aspect that concerns us. Our business at the SEC is not with the issuance of a legal tender or a digital legal tender. That is not our business. That is not our forte. That is not our interest. Our interest is that any institution that's involved in any transaction on any platform whatsoever in Nigeria, per the Securities and Investment Act 2007, Section 13, it's our business.
Mr. Gama, because of Mr. Gama, thank you so much. We know where you stand, and that's a very welcome one from you. Nana Wachuku, while we come back to before we come back to some of the things Mr. Gama has said, I want you to look at help us understand. A lot has been going on about the CBDC. Central bank, digital currencies, and forth. What do you see? What's the potential of CBDC? What is the potential will it help financial inclusion and growth of the economies and the GDP of Africa? What do you think? Do you think it will help? What's the potential? What are the opportunities to the African economy?
Thank you very much, Paul, for the question, and very nice to hold this panel discussion with every single person here. So regarding the potential for the CBDC, so first of all, I just want to first bring it back because CBDC is essentially cryptocurrency for by the central bank, digital currency for the central bank in Africa. I just want to quickly bring this back and say, cryptocurrency is one opportunity it has given like individuals, and I think some economies as well, is it has allowed easy remittance, cross-border payments. It has also allowed financial inclusion and financial empowerment for a lot of enthusiasts who has gotten into this into the crypto space. And when we bring it back, well, I think for economies, for African economies, I think if we are able to adopt the cryptocurrency for our cross-border payments, I think it's going to encourage cross-border trade. Is going to allow faster payments. And as you know, most of our economies in Africa are dependent on US dollars. And one thing we can achieve with the digital currency is it's going to allow us to reduce the dependence on USD and improve and encourage faster trade within our economies. And this is one of the amazing thing about the free trade, the free trade the African Union is coming up with. If we're able to implement this across the continent and also have a currency that allows us transfer funds very quickly and easily, I think it's going to encourage transactions with SMEs. It's going to encourage a lot of businesses to also transact very quickly and allow efficient payments across borders. So I think this is one thing it's going to do for economy. It's going to empower individuals financially, especially those who are who handle small businesses, who trade with other African countries, and it's also going to essentially it empowers our economy to do better. It's more people have more earning power, and traders have less issues with cross-border payments, which is one of the main problems we're trying to tackle. With of course with the guidance of the regulators, is one of the main problems we're trying to tackle with cryptocurrency.
Thank you so much. Now, I personally have experienced this issue where there was a time I went to Mali, and I realized that I had to go with, I realized that I had to, the exchange rate, they will first convert to dollars, and it was easier for me to get my money, to get the local currency with US dollars. Now, if you go to South Africa, it's the same thing. Now, is it possible across Africa, especially with trade, especially and I've noticed this over time, when you're dealing with people across Africa, even in Zimbabwe, in most places, when you're talking to them, everybody wants to hear USD. Now, with the CBDC, is there a way that the African Union or the African central banks, this question, I think, Olayemi, you can help us with it. Is there a way that we can develop the CBDCs across board to help us, bridge the gap of African remittances between African nations, not relying on the dollar that is scarce? Your mic is muted.
Thank you very much, Paul. I think that will depend a lot on the kind of convergence we have.
You have a minute.
At the African level, because if each currency is still locked to a particular country, the rules are not consistent, yes, we will de-emphasize the dollar, most definitely, but each currency will still have to trade at par with the other. Yes, for some time, the dollar will still be relevant, right? I don't think the dollar is going anywhere very soon, but with a lot of other countries like China, like Sweden, actually, testing their own digital currency, and with the economic size of China and just as rich, hopefully, but to the extent that we still have balance of payments, right? to the extent that we still have to rely on foreign exchange to sustain our economy, I'm not very sure we will get there as far as we do now, because as long as we need other currency to trade to survive, we cannot achieve the autonomy we need. But if we converge at an African level, if we try to focus a bit more inwards and be less dollar dependent or less foreign exchange dependent, then I think the digital currency will actually hasten our process to get where we want to go, autonomy. I think the digital
Thank you so much for that. Senator, what are the potential hurdles that you see in the development of a regulatory framework for fintech in Africa? What are the potential hurdles? And how do we overcome them? In just a minute, just let us know, because we still have to take Q&A from the participants. What are the potential hurdles that we see?
What are the potential what?
What are the potential hurdles that you can see in the development of the problems in developing a regulatory framework for fintech in Africa?
Thank you very much. It's a good thing we are part of the history happening in Africa today. We're seeing both some opportunities and risk playing out right in front of our faces. You find that because fintech is driven by the young demography, the young youth who are quite innovative and energetic, you find that disrupting the traditional way of doing things has been the main thing in terms of fintech, trying to make things less expensive, trying to make things faster, trying to make things more accessible to people. We talk about financial inclusion. The problems I see regarding regulating that space that is so fast and agile and disruptive and innovative is one, I see the issue of balance. There's a problem of balance. I say this because the regulators are on one path. They want to maximize safety. They want to maximize consumer protection, investment protection, whether it's the central banks in Africa, whether it's the Securities and Exchange Commissions in Africa, whether it's the deposit insurance banks in Africa. The common interest is to protect the members of the public. And we can't take it away from them, from the regulators, whether we like it or not, however innovative we say we are. At the other part is the other side, innovators that just want to break stuff and do stuff and get out there. Innovators who are not happy that today Africa is struggling with hundreds of millions of people who don't have access to financial services or financial, where there's no financial inclusion, all right? And so they just want to break things. You bring regulation, it sounds like bad news, and they want to move on. That's the problem of balance. It then means that a problem would be, how do we get regulators to understand the perspective from which innovators are coming from? And how do we get innovators to understand where regulators are coming from so that we meet in the middle? We cannot have extremes. We have to find a place in the middle. And finding a place in the middle means mutual understanding. You know, there should be no czar about it. No one should think that if we just come into the space, introduce this, license this, and all of that, it doesn't work that way. If we look at other jurisdictions that went way far from Africa, you find that it was a deliberate step to build the ecosystem first. You know, lots of regulators in Africa find it difficult to understand why regulators should be concerned about building the ecosystem and not just protecting it.
Thank you, Senator. I just want to add something to what you just said. You know, the deliberate stand by other jurisdictions, even the regulators. I've noticed that consistently in the US, in Malta, in Seychelles, and some of those places. There is a deliberate policy, even in China, by the regulators to see innovation take place. before regulating. You know, we're not particularly seeing that in Africa here, where there's a push, and not just a push by mouth, but a push by putting their money into it. When they bring up the sandboxes, you know, they try to get investors to come along and put their money there to see the ecosystem grow. Because the truth about it is that most times what I see regulators want to do most times is with respect to Mr. Gama here, it's not just about tax, but sometimes they just want to go after taxing and trying to catch the bad actors. But you see, most times what I see from other jurisdictions, they just want grow. Then we begin to take out the bad eggs, you know, remove the bad eggs from the good ones. So I see that as a very important policy going forward. Now, there's something I want Mr. Gama to help us with here is, sir, with concerning the growth of CBDC. Do you think that CBDC will the central bank digital currency, can it really help in financial inclusion and economic growth for Africa as a regulator, not just as a regulator, but somebody who has watched this space for some time? Do you see the CBDC helping transform and aid financial inclusion and economic growth, sir?
Yeah,
in 2 minutes, sir,
Paul.
please, sir.
Yeah, yes. So immediately, yes, I want to make a point clear. A lot of times, operators believe that the regulators don't have brains, that they have water running in their head, and somehow probably they have never been operators. So they assume from their comfort zone that you see the regulators are not taking it easy, they are not spending money, all of that, But that is totally wrong. Totally wrong. We spend our money, we spend our time. We've been watching this system for the last 2-3 years now as SEC. And a lot of you, including Senator, have been urging the SEC, what are we doing? What statements are you making? And we held back not to make any statement. Now we have made statement, it's as if we are rushing. We are not rushing. We've been watching and we've been learning. So that needs to be taken and understood. And of course, we understand the system. We are schooled much more than a lot of you are. A lot of the people operating are fly-by-night operators. We take our time, we do research, right? Then coming to your question about the fluidity of digital asset currencies for African trade, it is very, very important and it is useful. But in as much as it is useful and important, the fluidity must be watched, must be curtailed, must work within parameters. You see, they say if you give a child 1 step, he will take 20 steps. That is the context of which we operate. Our level of self-contentment and self-dignity, a lot of times put to question the ability to leave the space just like that. And that is the problem. And that is why, as regulators in Africa, we are always, very circumspect about what is happening. We don't sleep keeping our 2 eyes closed. No, we sleep with both eyes open. Yet we are sleeping, but the eyes must be open. All it's in a bid to protect ourselves, to protect our image, to protect what we do. I can give you a straight example. Operators in this field came to my office in Lagos and they met. We had a meeting with them, trying to judge up with all of them, trying to say, okay, how do we move forward in this industry? Then 2 operators met each other in that meeting and became friends. One of the operators duped the other operator of 30 million naira. And that case was brought to my attention. That is the reason why we do what we do. But talking about economics, because that is my other area of specialization, digital currency is important and will be useful for the enablement of trade and growth in Africa. And you've mentioned the issue of dollarization. which is, yes, the mainstay or the current trend in Africa and almost over the world, except with the emergence of China being, another strong power. With digital currency, with a denomination that is accepted wide in Africa, the fluidity that we are talking about will be so easy and sweet. And it is like traveling. Today, if you want to go to Cape Verde, which is at the corner just by my village, you have to go through Senegal, then take another flight. In fact, it is easier to go to Cape Verde through Portugal, which is in Europe, than going to Cape Verde through Africa. So that is, an analogy of what digital currency will ordinarily provide. But it is important that we must also see it from the angle of the central bank. What is the strength of the African economy for you to just allow more movement of funds or movement of money? You cannot allow that as a sovereign nation in Africa because there is no strength. There must be an underlying strength for any Africa to be able to withstand the inflow and outflow of funds without inhibition. Hence, the central banks in Africa has to be very, very careful. We should not compare ourselves with other countries, with Europe or with the Americas, and say, well, since these are operates freely in those continents, so must it be in Africa? No, we must tread with care. And that is very crucial and important. As much as we are anxious, as much as we are optimistic, as much as we are eager, in our eagerness, we must have contentment and containment. And it's only
Thank
when we
you very much.
be able to achieve what we want.
Mr. Gama, thank you so much. We have some questions from the audience, the attendees. Deji, please, quickly, in 1 minute, what do you think, based on the supply and demand of currency, how do we see the framework for supply and demand of CBDC in relation to finance, trade, and capital in Africa? Based on the supply and demand of currency, how do we see the framework for supply and demand of CBDC in relation to finance, trade, and capital, I think, in Africa?
Okay, thank you very much. I don't know if I'm unmuted. Okay.
Yes,
thank you very much. You see,
Please, we are behind schedule, so just go with
and I believe
1 minute.
The central point of this panel. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like the central thing in this panel is to look at the importance of that CBDC and also how the regulation around it can actually foster financial inclusion within Africa. And that includes trade, that includes a lot of things mentioned earlier in your question. But in answering that, we have to be specific on what kind of model a particular country is. It's not one brush. There are different models that countries always adopt or are looking into adopting when they are moving into this CBDC issue. Take, for instance, they can decide to go in a single tier model, which we know that the central bank now hijacks the responsibility of cash distribution and reaching customers directly, just like we do have with our commercial banks. That is one. And that will entail what aspect and what impact it will have on trade and what impact it will have on financial inclusion in a particular economy. And some of them may choose within the countries in Africa that we are going with a multi-layered model, which the central bank sees at the top and encourage the fintech businesses to actually spray while they do the cash distribution and payment channels through these banks that will be licensed by them. And when that is done, we all understand that the regulatory framework is going to be tilted towards that. And when you're looking at the single tier, for instance, it means the central bank alone have to do all the KYC and all the activities and monitoring and fostering trades and investment and all that within the economy, and also meeting the regulatory norms like the commercial banks will do. And if they decide to go with the second one, like I'm just dealing with how it will work through and how the regulations can actually affect the trades you talked about. If they decide to go with the multi-tier ecosystem, and that one also, it means they have to engage the third parties, like I say, and subject them to robust regulatory oversight and supervision. And at the end, with the hope of protecting and avoiding risk and also fostering international trade within the economy. So this whole discussion is very wide. Picking one single aspect will not be probable way to answer the whole question straight off. But this, has to do with the kind of model, with the kind of approach, with a lot of things that need to be done. The cross-border thing that we talk about, the less of dollarization that we talk about, those are not one sweep solution that technology can actually help you solve. For instance, if your technology is helping you solve that, when your economic policy is not right, when there's no transparency within the system, of course, that flight to dollar will continually be encouraged. People want to go to those places and get dollar to replace that national currency because there's no value. It has to do with trust. It has to do with you having value. It has to do with things working rightly, as you see. So African countries have to wake up, have to model their economic policy to actually, affect the poor, to make sure that the money, the value you do have, the work you do today will not be eroded in the next 5 days because of the poor economic policy within their economy. So if those things are not handled, possibly we are not going to get solution to all this, the fruits that we're looking at about the economic prosperity, about the balance of trade and all that within African countries.
Thank you so much, Deji. That's a very good one. There's a question here, and I want any of the panelists to just answer it. It says, why are we in Africa not rigorously promoting the deployment of technology and innovation as a powerful tool to minimize human intervention and eliminate opportunities for fraud and corruption prevention? The person went forward to say, what Africa needs is a mechanism to compel African countries to introduce and implement new technology in the governance system to ensure transparency, accountability, due diligence in public finance management system. So what this person, coming back to the question, is saying, why are we in Africa not rigorously promoting the deployment of technology and innovation as a powerful tool to minimize human intervention and eliminate opportunities for fraud and corruption prevention? So please, anybody who is any of the panelists can go. You see.
Yes, I can take that. You see, when you talk about trust machine, for instance, which is the promises of blockchain, and I did say it one time, and I said African countries always shout corruption, corruption. I shared it on my social media, and I said when we have technology that can actually help us, curb this corruption. So the whole thing is the government are not sincere to its citizen, and as such, they are not interested in incorporating those, digitization that will bring transparency into the system. And when that is not done, we are still joking about everything. If we want to lash on anti-money laundering, we want to lash on fraud, why the bigger fraud is most times part of the government that refuse to come out transparently to transact businesses. Because, the activities of government begat the activity of the citizen. When you are transparent with your own citizen, they will seems to be transparent with you. So if, like the question, whoever asked that question is driving a very germane point to get into the destination where we want to get to. Because most of the problem we do have, digitization can help us. But again, like I used to say, no one single brush can do that. Because when you look at digitization, the statistic for 4G within Africa, you know what it is? Like only 3G, even 40% of Africa are covered. And when you want to say digitization, how do you begin to digitize? When the vast majority of your people have no access to this minimal infrastructure that will propel this development that we all talk about. Which is good. You can see we are seated here. We cut the whole network is cutting off minute by minute, and we are joining. This is what we talk about. When you bring a bigger thing like CBDC to run on a bigger infrastructure, our problem just begins. And roll out of that. If we look at going into those ones, what about the cybersecurity effect? Where are the manpower within the central banks, for instance, to handle all those whole infrastructure? So there's a myriad of things. Apart from the regulation, there's a myriad of things that need to be fixed, to get to the whole thing.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deji.
It's very key.
Thank you so much for that. There's a very important question here. Somebody's making a comment. He said, I don't see why central banks in Africa should be worried about CBDC if they still retain monetary and physical control. And somebody asked another question in line with that. He said, Mr. Timi Agama's concern will make sense if we are talking about adopting a non-central bank cryptocurrency. In this scenario, the central banks lose monetary policy. But in the other scenario that the person was talking about, he's talking about, the CBDCs where the central bank issues out the digital currency. So can somebody make just a 2 minutes this thing before we round up, because we're out of time?
Yeah, yes. So let me speak a little to what the panelists are talking about. When you speak about monetary and fiscal control, you should understand that you should also be talking about the power, the ability to issue legal tender. If you lose the power and ability to issue legal tender, then you do not have control over fiscal and monetary policy. It's simple economics. When you speak of digitalization, you are speaking of fluidity, movement of currency that does not have any sovereign control. The essence of decentralization, that is principally the essence of decentralization, that sovereign control will now diminish and market control will take principal place. That is still a long way to go in Africa and in the economy that we have. And when you talk about sovereign control, diminishing sovereign control, you are talking about the use of the commodities of those institutions or those countries. Africa is a country blessed with commodities. What is important is that we should start tying our currency, digital currency or whatever, with the commodities in Africa. Then it creates a value for you to be able to allow for complete digitalization, not what we have today.
Thank you, Mr. Timi. Mr. Timi, I think before you speak, Mr. Timi, I'll give you, Senator. I think you didn't get that. I'm not saying, but probably you're misunderstanding the CBDC thing. And somebody just said that. He said, Mr. Timi, I'm afraid you're mistaken. See, he said CBDCs are not decentralized currencies. They are actually centralized currencies, but I think that's what Senator wants to say. Senator, come up quickly, sir.
No, yes, it is not that I said it's a decentralized currency. The issuance of a currency that is fluid, right? That allows you to spend without the engagement of the central bank of that particular country. Because when we talk about digital currencies, we look at one, is it a right policy for the country itself? And that is why we are talking about contextualization. If it is not,
Mr. Gama,
it will be for a discussion later. But
Mr. Gama, we'll have to build on this. Senator, just take a minute.
A thing or two about this. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Yeah. This is an observation I will make. If Bitcoin had not been invented, if the decentralized currencies like Ethereum, Litecoin, and others had not been invented before the evolution or the idea or concept of CBDC, centralized central bank digital currencies, I am sure this conversation would not be this complex. The reason why regulators like the central bank would be scared, all right, or concerned about the idea of digital currencies, even for the central bank, is because the central bank is seeing this as a competition with the Satoshis. The central bank is seeing this as a competition with Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, which is not necessarily so. This is what I will say. Whether we like it or not, the market is speaking. Regulators need to listen to the markets. The markets, there's a demand right now for smart money, whatever we call it. The reason for the demand for smart money is that today we have smartphones. Excuse me, please. Today we have smartphones. We have, sorry, excuse me. There's a second speaker in the house.
Yeah.
Right. So today we have smartphones. We have what you call smart economy.
you have what you call IoT and big data. This is all about being smart and having speed, flexibility. The idea of digital currencies is to allow flexibility and smartness in such a manner that...
Thank you, Senator. Senator, thank you. Let's just quickly take
what I was going to hit on is this. I would advise that the regulators, all right, go back to research. I think that the earlier regulators introduced CBDCs, the better for them.
Thank you very much. Nana, please. Nana Wachuku and Olayemi Ayanechi, please, quickly, can you help us with this issue of CBDC and CBDC? Does it have anything to do with this? Is it decentralized? Is it centralized? Does it have anything? Should the central banks be afraid of issuing digital currencies? And what is the import for the African economies? In 2 minutes each, please.
Okay, I just want to add very quickly. Your question is aligned to what Senator was just saying. I just want to add very quickly to that. So there's nothing, like Senator said, the earlier our authorities, the regulators, create a digital currency that they can handle or manage themselves, the better for everyone, because whether they get into it or not, digital currency I don't think it's going to go away anytime soon, because no one can control it, no one can power it, no one can hold it or turn it off or turn it on. It's already on the internet. So I really think we need to find a way to go ahead and I think the main concern our regulators have is Mr. Gamal said, that we will not have control of, we'll not be able to manage a illegal tender. Like, what happens to our economies if we're not in charge of our currencies? Which is a very, very valid question. But I think that's what China is trying to do. They're trying to take charge of this digital currency, be 2 steps ahead by creating their own currency. And I think that's something we can also start to look at in Africa. I think I'm just going to pause here because, but essentially, I think we should actually start, looking at cryptocurrency for Africa and get on this trend, so we can manage and take control of our money as quickly as possible. Money is going to continue to evolve. We moved from cowries to precious stones to coins, and now we're on paper money. They're now moving to electrical money, digital money. It's going to happen. So we need to find a way to, to regulate and take charge of it, basically, if possible.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for that. While Mr. Gama, just one second. Ms. Olayemi, please, I want you to talk about the CBDC. Should government be afraid of issuing a CBDC? When you finish, a minute, 30 seconds, Mr. Gama will take 30 seconds. Then please, panelists, please just go to the chat box, answer some questions that you see that are channeled to you. Mr. Gama, there is a question for you that you can go there and answer it. Ms. Olayemi, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. You spoke earlier about whether it was decentralized. I think it depends, and I think one of the panelists spoke about it. So it depends on what structure. You can have a direct account with the central bank. Is that the structure that's been implemented? Now, when you do that, you kind of take away the normal intermediation process, so banks become a bit less relevant. But you can have another structure which still uses all these intermediaries, and you hold an account with the bank. So I think it depends on the process or the structure. But I think central banks in putting it together would not want to destabilize the financial system too much. For instance, so if you allow individuals to hold accounts directly with central bank, what do banks do? What do difficult financial intermediation do? How does that affect, the normal regulatory intermediation that banks do? So all those issues come up. Whether or not banks will be afraid, I think they occupy 2 different places, because, when the banks issue digital currency, it's by fiat, it's a currency. It's like having the Naira. And the space which crypto occupies is slightly different, because the aim of crypto is that, people can do it without, they can do it seemingly without interference, without, it protects their privacy. But how much it protects their privacy is still a question, because once you're online, you do leave digital footprints. It's not as sanitized as we think. I think central banks will get there. whether or not they want, because you know what? The markets will just propel them towards it. But whether or not this is a sustainable solution, we will find out ahead of time. I think time will tell. How that would affect the financial stability of the system, I don't think it's something any of us know. We can only guess, we can only conjecture. I think we will discover that over time. So time will tell.
Thank you so much for that. Mr. Gama, you have 30 seconds.
Yes, all I just want to say is that we should tread with caution. In as much as we are anxious, we need to understand it. The presumption that some people understand more than some people is totally wrong. The cup is either half full or half empty. It all depends on where you are looking at it from. Thank you.
Thank you. Please, all the panelists, you have 10 seconds or 20 seconds for a closing statement. Anything you want to add? Mr. Gama has just done that. Senator, go ahead.
All right. Thank you very much. I would just like to say that the reason we have digital currencies today, I mean the decentralized digital currencies like Bitcoin and others, is because there was a problem in the system in the first place. And we cannot deny that problem. Those problems exist till date. What CBDCs get to bring into the system is an opportunity for regulators to fix the frictions. With central bank digital currencies, the central banks all across Africa have a golden opportunity to integrate with the digital economy, to integrate with the smart economy that already moved ahead. Today, we say that Africa has very low percentage of cross-border trade amongst themselves.
10 seconds.
About 15%. One way to fix that is to ensure the mobility of money. Money is not moving in Africa. That's why money is moving outside Africa. We need to make money move easily, faster, speedily, and safely within the African region.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So there should be more fluidity of money moving in Africa. Mr. Deji, you have 20 seconds.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I think the main thing is, like Agama just said, the regulators, the central bank, and all that they are researching. I'm privy to some of their very, very highly researched documents. They know what they're doing. But of course, it's just the new terrain that everyone is learning with a lot of things. So they have to move from beyond the pilot stage at this moment and begin to roll out things that will transform the earnings and the demand of the young economy, because a lot of people need smart money, like some other earlier speaker did mention. Then the decision to actually issue those CBDC is a decision that affects everybody in the country, from legislators to different laws, to lawyers, to all the people that are doing it, and also looking inward for the technical capacity of the central banks and to see if they actually have the resources to actually move on with this, while they also catapult Africa out of the dark side that we have belonged to now.
Thank you so much. Ms. Nana, you have 20 seconds. Anything you want to add?
Yeah, I just want to add that just like the central bank is in control or manages fiat currencies. They created, every country in Africa has their own unique currency. We have Naira in Nigeria, Ghana cedis in Ghana, and etc. I think in the same way we can look into CBDC from this perspective. We can start from there. So, okay, this is our own. We want to put our fiat currency and make it digital. We can start from there, and that way, I think, of course, I don't know better than the regulators, of course, but I think in that way we can begin to have step by step create a framework for, so we can a framework to keep us ahead or keep us at par with the rest of the world. We don't want to be left behind in Africa. We want to stay competitive. We want to keep advancing and growing as much as we can as young millennials, as businessmen, as SMEs. We want to be able to compete with the rest of the world. So we can start from
there. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Ms. Olaimi, 10 seconds. Anything you want to add?
I just want to say why I think the central bank should focus on it is, it's better to be proactive than reactive. When you focus on something, you can build a process that works. When there's uncertainty in the system, it creates regulatory arbitrage. And that is where corruption and fraud lies, when people are not sure. And the beauty of having standard regulation and following the process is that you reduce the overlap between regulatory agencies. That increases cost. It increases the barriers to entry. And so for me, I think the way to go is a structured way to get where we're going, because like everybody has said, we will get there whether we like it or not. That's just the way the world is going. We might as well just address it full on so we can determine what we want. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So in a nutshell, the panelists have said it all. We need a structured way for CBDCs. We need financial inclusion. We need more fluidity among African nations. We need the money to evolve around Africa, not first going to Europe or Dubai, then come back to Africa. Most times money goes to Dubai, goes to UAE, goes outside Africa, then comes back to South Africa or comes back to Africa or Nigeria. So we need the money to move from Nigeria to South Africa, from Nigeria to other nations in Africa. You do business, you cut out the middleman, you cut out the Europeans, you cut out the Americans, you cut out the Asians, then you develop Africa with it. And most importantly, some persons also have said that it is important that we start with digitizing our local currencies. It's the same thing, they are still centralized money, but in digital form. And it's more fluid that way. It's still controllable. The monetary policies are still with the sovereign nations who control it. So thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate it. It was a very wonderful session. And I think it's live on Facebook. We could go back and have a recap of the things said here. It was a very beautiful session and very interactive session. Lastly, while we go, there are some very important questions about two of them, which we can't take now. But while we leave this room, I would beg us to please go back and either rejoin as attendees and answer them. They're very important questions. Somebody talked about building infrastructure also in Africa, and one other question is Titus who asked the question. So we could go back and answer them on the chat room. Thank you so much. Thank you, Policy House. Thank you, Coin News Extra. Thank you, panelists, and even the attendees. We say thank you once again, and good luck.